The rain poured endlessly across Lagos that evening, flooding the streets with muddy water while exhausted traders scrambled desperately to protect their goods from the storm, and among the shouting drivers, rushing pedestrians, and flickering streetlights stood Naima, balancing a tray of roasted corn carefully on her head while moving from car to car with tired eyes and aching feet, praying silently that before the night ended she would sell enough to finally eat a decent meal after surviving almost 2 days on nothing but water. Life had hardened many people around her, but somehow it had never succeeded in hardening Naima's heart, because even after losing both parents at a young age, even after struggling through hunger, insults, unpaid rent, and endless disappointment, she still treated people gently, still smiled at strangers, and still believed kindness mattered even in a world that often rewarded cruelty more than goodness. Across the city that same evening, Anna Okafor sat inside one of Lagos' most luxurious rooftop restaurants wearing a fitted black designer gown and diamonds that shimmered beneath the golden lights while wealthy guests greeted her with admiration everywhere she turned, because in Lagos high society Anna was known for beauty, status, elegance, and influence, but very few people knew the truth behind the coldness hidden beneath her polished smile. Anna had not grown up wealthy, and years earlier she had lived in a cramped apartment with a struggling mother who cleaned offices for rich families while enduring constant humiliation from employers who treated poor people like trash. And as a child Anna watched her mother cry herself to sleep night after being insulted, ignored, and looked down upon simply because they lacked money. So over time Anna made a decision deep inside herself that she would never be poor again. But somewhere along the journey her desire for success slowly transformed into bitterness, and instead of becoming compassionate toward struggling people, she began despising them because they reminded her too much of the painful life she hated leaving behind. By the time Anna met Carlton Adimi, she had already mastered the art of becoming everything Lagos high society admired, because she was beautiful, sophisticated, polished, intelligent, and effortlessly elegant, and Carlton initially believed she was the woman he wanted to marry. Carlton himself was one of the youngest and most respected hotel owners in Lagos, admired for his calm intelligence, discipline, and success, and together he and Anna appeared powerful, glamorous, and untouchable, the kind of couple constantly featured at charity galas, luxury events, and magazine parties, but over time Carlton began noticing cracks beneath Anna's perfection because she insulted waiters over small mistakes, mocked struggling workers openly, and treated drivers and cleaners as though they were invisible, and whenever Carlton gently questioned her behavior, Anna always defended herself the same way. "Nobody showed kindness to my mother when we were poor," she would say coldly. "The world only respects power and money." At first Carlton excused her behavior because he understood her painful past, but eventually he realized something heartbreaking, because although Anna had escaped poverty physically, bitterness had completely consumed her emotionally. That same night, after leaving the restaurant together, Carlton and Anna drove through the flooded Lagos streets inside a black luxury SUV while heavy rain hammered violently against the windows, and as traffic slowed near a crowded roadside market, Carlton's attention suddenly shifted toward a young woman rushing through the storm with a tray balanced carefully on her head. It was Naima. Her clothes were soaked. Her slippers dragged through muddy water. Exhaustion covered her face, yet despite her own suffering she suddenly stopped moving after noticing an elderly blind man struggling dangerously near the flooded roadside, his walking stick slipping repeatedly against the wet pavement while impatient drivers shouted angrily for him to move. Dozens of people ignored him. Some laughed. Others simply walked away. But without hesitation Naima lowered her tray and rushed toward him just as his foot nearly slid into the rushing gutter water beside the road. "Careful, Papa," she said softly while grabbing his arm firmly to steady him. The old man trembled badly beneath the rain, his soaked clothes clinging weakly to his thin body while cold water dripped continuously from his gray beard, and when he finally spoke, his voice sounded fragile and exhausted. "My daughter, I have not eaten since yesterday." For a brief moment Naima froze because inside the small nylon bag hanging beside her tray was the only food she had left for herself that night, one loaf of bread and a sachet of water she had carefully saved while ignoring the painful hunger twisting inside her stomach all day long, and although her body desperately wanted her to keep it, something inside her simply would not allow her to walk away from the old man empty-handed. Without hesitation she opened the bag slowly and placed the bread and water into his trembling hands. The old man looked stunned. But this may be your own food. Naima smiled softly despite the weakness already settling into her body. God will provide for me somehow. Inside the SUV, Anna laughed quietly while shaking her head. That girl is exactly why poor people remain poor, she said coldly. She has nothing, yet she is still giving things away. But Carlton remained silent because unlike Anna, he could not stop staring at Naima. The old blind man was not truly blind. He was Chief Adimi, Carlton's father. For months Chief Adimi had secretly traveled through different parts of Lagos disguised as a helpless old man after growing increasingly disappointed by the selfishness and cruelty surrounding wealthy society, especially after noticing how many people treated struggling strangers with contempt and disrespect, and during those months countless people insulted him, ignored him, mocked him, or even stole from him, yet a young woman with almost nothing to her name had willingly given away her last meal without expecting absolutely anything in return. And from that very moment Carlton could not forget her. The next morning Naima woke suddenly to loud knocking outside her tiny rented room, and panic immediately rushed through her body because she assumed her landlord had finally come to throw her belongings outside after months of unpaid rent. But the moment she pulled open the door, her entire body froze in shock because 3 black SUVs were parked outside her building while several well-dressed men stood respectfully near the entrance and curious neighbors crowded around whispering excitedly among themselves, and before Naima could fully process what was happening, Carlton stepped calmly out of the middle vehicle looking effortlessly elegant even in simple clothes. Naima stared nervously. I hope I did not offend somebody yesterday. Carlton smiled gently. No, Naima. In fact, you reminded my father that good people still exist. Confusion filled her face immediately until Chief Adimi slowly stepped out from the vehicle behind him holding the same walking stick from the previous night, and the moment Naima recognized him, her eyes widened with complete disbelief. You. The old man smiled warmly. Yes, my daughter. Naima stood speechless while Carlton handed her an envelope containing enough money to clear all her debts along with ownership documents for a fully furnished apartment and an offer to manage a struggling restaurant his company had recently purchased but failed to improve successfully. Tears filled Naima's eyes almost instantly because nothing about the moment felt real. This cannot possibly be happening. It is happening, Carlton replied softly. My father believes kindness reveals a person's true character more than wealth ever will. From that day forward Naima's life slowly began changing in ways she never imagined possible, but while opportunity entered her life peacefully, jealousy entered it violently, because the moment Anna saw the way Carlton looked at Naima, she felt something she had not experienced in years, and that feeling was fear. It was not fear of losing wealth. It was not fear of losing status. It was fear that despite everything she had built, despite all the money, beauty, and influence she spent years chasing, Carlton and his father were beginning to admire something she no longer possessed herself. A good heart. Chief Adimi openly praised Naima constantly while Carlton sought her opinions during business meetings and employees adored her kindness because she treated everyone with dignity regardless of status. And slowly the restaurant flourished under her leadership because customers could feel the sincerity inside everything she touched, while children from poor neighborhoods ran excitedly toward her whenever she arrived because she never allowed hungry people to leave empty-handed. And with every passing day Anna's jealousy became darker. At business dinners she mocked Naima's background. At charity events she introduced her sarcastically as the former roadside corn seller. Whenever Carlton defended Naima, Anna felt rejected not only as a fiancée but as a woman, because deep inside she knew Carlton admired Naima in ways he no longer admired her. One evening during an extravagant gala attended by some of Lagos' most powerful families, Anna finally snapped after noticing Carlton smiling warmly at Naima during a conversation with Chief Adimi, and jealousy consumed her so completely that she intentionally spilled expensive red wine across Naima's dress before laughing coldly in front of wealthy guests and flashing cameras. Oh no, Anna said dramatically. I completely forgot village girls are not used to these kinds of events. The ballroom fell silent instantly while humiliation burned across Naima's face and whispers spread through the crowd, but before Naima could even react, Carlton removed his suit jacket immediately and wrapped it gently around her shoulders before turning toward Anna with visible disappointment in his eyes. That is enough. Anna stared at him in disbelief. You were embarrassing me because of her. Carlton's expression hardened instantly. No, Anna, you embarrass yourself every time you treat people without dignity. The room froze, and for the first time in years Anna felt truly ashamed, not because people were watching but because deep inside she realized Carlton and his father had chosen Naima's kindness over her pride. Desperate to destroy Naima completely, Anna secretly arranged for money to disappear from the restaurant accounts weeks later so Naima would be blamed publicly for theft and disgraced permanently, but the plan collapsed after security footage exposed Anna herself working with a bribed employee to manipulate the accounts behind the scenes, and the scandal spread quickly across Lagos high society. Carlton ended the engagement immediately. Chief Adimi cut ties with Anna professionally. And suddenly the same elite society that once praised her began turning away from her quietly, and for the first time in her life Anna experienced the loneliness created by her own cruelty. Meanwhile Naima's success continued growing far beyond anything she once imagined possible, not because she chased wealth desperately but because kindness kept opening doors she never could have forced open herself, and over time Carlton fell deeply in love with a woman whose generosity had changed not only his father's life but his own heart as well. 2 years later Carlton and Naima were married in a beautiful outdoor ceremony filled with warmth, music, family, and genuine happiness, and years after that they built a joyful life together surrounded by children whose laughter filled their home with peace and love, while together they opened community centers, scholarship programs, and food initiatives dedicated to helping struggling families across Lagos. But the most unexpected moment came many years later. One sunny afternoon Naima was helping prepare food donations at one of her community centers while Carlton stood nearby helping their young children organize supplies for families in need, and suddenly a luxury car pulled quietly into the driveway. As the doors opened, Naima froze in surprise. It was Anna, but she was not alone. Her husband stepped out beside her holding the hand of their young daughter while their little son climbed excitedly out of the back seat, and immediately Naima noticed something completely different about Anna. She looked softer, calmer, at peace. The bitterness that once filled her eyes was gone. A wedding ring rested gently on her finger while her husband smiled warmly beside her with quiet affection. Naima looked stunned while Anna walked slowly toward her with emotional tears already forming in her eyes. I owe both of you an apology, Anna said quietly while glancing toward Carlton and their children nearby. Naima remained silent while Anna smiled sadly before continuing. Losing Carlton destroyed me at first, but eventually I realized something painful. I spent my entire life becoming the kind of rich person I once hated as a child, because I became cold believing kindness made people weak. Tears rolled slowly down her cheeks while she looked around at the community center filled with families Naima had helped. But watching you changed something inside me. Watching Carlton and his father choose your kindness over my pride forced me to finally confront the person I had become, and for the first time in my life I understood that kindness is not weakness. It is strength. Naima's eyes softened emotionally while Anna smiled warmly toward the children playing nearby. I met my husband during the hardest season of my life after I finally started changing. I learned how to treat people better. I learned how to forgive. I learned how to love without pride. And today I came here with my husband and children to thank you, because your kindness changed my life too. At that moment Carlton walked toward them carrying one of his young sons in his arms while another child held tightly onto Naima's hand. And for a brief second both families stood together smiling peacefully beneath the warm Lagos sunlight, no longer connected by jealousy or pain but by growth, healing, and the lessons life had taught them all differently. And as Anna hugged Naima tightly with tears in her eyes, she finally understood something she wished she had learned years earlier. Money can open doors. Beauty can attract attention. Status can impress people. But kindness and generosity have the power to completely transform lives, including your own. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you check out our other stories on our YouTube channel.